I never imagined I'd be sitting in a courtroom, listening to my own mother and brother testify against me. My ex-husband, the same one who cheated on me, wanted to take my 5-year-old son away from me and demand millions in child support. They thought I was just a divorced woman, vulnerable and easily destroyed. But what nobody in that room knew was that I had a secret that would change everything in a matter of minutes. But before I tell you the secret, subscribe to the channel. For you, it may be just a click. But for us, it's fuel to continue searching for and bringing you these incredible stories. I still remember the scent of her perfume on his shirt. It was an expensive fragrance, not the one I'd worn through 12 years of marriage. Michael walked through our Menlo Park front door that December night in 2022 with that rehearsed smile I'd learned to recognize, the same one he used in court when lying to juries. "Client meeting ran late," he said, kissing my forehead with lips that had probably kissed another woman hours before. I sat on our leather sectional, laptop open, working on the code that would change my life forever. Tyler slept peacefully in the next room, completely unaware that our family was crumbling around us. In that moment, I was still just Sarah, the devoted wife who accepted breadcrumbs of attention. 3 months later, I would discover who I really was. But that night, I just smiled back and pretended not to notice the lipstick stain on his collar. Some betrayals whisper before they scream. TechLegal Solutions was born from frustration. For years, I'd watched Michael complain about the inefficiency of the judicial systems where he practiced corporate law in San Francisco. "Sarah, you don't understand how archaic these systems are," he'd say, dismissing my suggestions with the arrogance I'd once romanticized as confidence. But I understood more than he imagined. Stanford computer science graduate, former Google engineer, I'd abandoned a promising career in Silicon Valley to play the perfect wife. While Michael built his reputation defending Fortune 500 companies, I built castles of code in our basement. The company started as a personal project, a case management system that could revolutionize California's court system. Michael barely paid attention when I talked about it during our increasingly rare dinners together. "That's nice, honey," he'd murmur, his mind already elsewhere, on someone else. Tyler was my anchor through the emotional chaos my marriage had become. At 5 years old, he had his father's curious eyes, but the quiet determination I recognized in myself. Every night, after Michael claimed to be reviewing contracts, Tyler and I had our sacred routine. Bath time, bedtime stories, and conversations about his day at Montessori school. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy ever stay for story time?" he asked one evening, those brown eyes sparkling with an innocence I'd give anything to protect. I swallowed the lump in my throat and answered, "Daddy's working very hard, sweetheart." Lie number 1,000, I'd told, to preserve the fantasy of our happy family. But looking at Tyler's trusting face, I made a silent promise that would reshape everything. He deserved better than a mother who accepted less than she was worth. We both did. The confrontation came on a rainy February morning when I found the hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. The Four Seasons San Francisco, a weekend when he'd claimed to be at a legal conference in Sacramento. My hand shook as I held the evidence of his betrayal. 12 years of marriage reduced to a crumpled piece of paper. When he walked into our kitchen that morning, coffee mug in hand, I placed the receipt on our granite countertop between us. The color drained from his face faster than I'd ever seen in court. "Sarah, I can explain," he started, but I held up my hand. "Don't." My voice was steadier than I felt. "Just don't." The silence stretched between us like a chasm, filled with everything we'd never said and everything we'd never be again. In that moment, I realized our marriage had been over long before I found that receipt. I had just been too afraid to admit it. Filing for divorce felt like stepping off a cliff into an uncertain future. My lawyer, Patricia Chin, sat across from me in her downtown San Francisco office, her expression gentle but professional as she explained California's community property laws. "Given your husband's income and your consulting work, you'll likely be entitled to spousal support," she said, glancing at the financial documents I'd provided. I shook my head firmly. "I don't want his money." What she didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that my consulting work was about to explode into something extraordinary. During those divorce proceedings, I also made another life-changing decision. I cut contact with my mother, Margaret, whose first reaction to news of my divorce was, "How will you survive without Michael's income?" The toxic pattern was clear. She'd trained me to believe I needed a man to validate my worth. That training stopped with me. Tyler would never learn that lesson. As my marriage disintegrated, my company flourished. Working 18-hour days became my therapy. Each line of code a step further from the woman who'd settled for Michael's scraps. TechLegal Solutions landed our first major contract with Alameda County Superior Court in spring 2023, a $2.3 million deal to overhaul their case management system. Michael was too consumed with his new girlfriend, Jessica, to notice the long hours or the expensive equipment arriving at our house. He assumed I was keeping busy with computer stuff while he played house with his 28-year-old paralegal. The irony wasn't lost on me. While he was building a relationship on lies and betrayal, I was building an empire on innovation and integrity. By the time our divorce was finalized in June 2023, TechLegal Solutions had expanded to serve courts throughout Northern California. But I kept quiet about the success, focusing solely on providing stability for Tyler. I had no idea that silence would come back to haunt me. 2 years passed in a blur of coding marathons, Tyler's soccer games, and the quiet satisfaction of building something meaningful. I hired Maria, a wonderful nanny who helped with Tyler while I worked, and we settled into a peaceful routine in our Palo Alto townhouse. Michael exercised his custody right sporadically, more interested in playing family man with Jessica than actually parenting. I didn't mind. Tyler thrived in our stable environment, excelling in school and making friends easily. My company continued growing exponentially, landing contracts with courts across 3 states and employing over 40 people. I kept our lifestyle modest, driving the same Honda Accord and shopping at Target, determined that Tyler would grow up grounded despite our changing circumstances. But success, I learned, has a way of revealing itself whether you want it to or not. 2 years after our divorce was finalized, when a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door with legal papers, I finally understood that Michael had discovered my secret, and he wanted his cut. The legal papers trembled in my hands as I read the devastating words: petition for modification of child custody and spousal support. Michael wasn't just coming for Tyler, he was coming for everything. What he discovered would have impressed me if it weren't being weaponized against my own child. TechLegal Solutions had exploded beyond my wildest dreams. Our proprietary case management system now powered over 200 courts across California, Nevada, and Arizona. We'd secured a $47 million contract with the California State Court System, revolutionizing how justice moved through the Golden State. Forbes had featured Maine their Women to Watch list, and Tech Week named us Startup of the Year. The company I'd built in my basement while Michael cheated was now valued at $150 million. But success, I was learning, painted a target on your back that even family members were willing to aim for. The betrayal I thought was over was just beginning. Michael's discovery hadn't been accidental. It was methodical, calculated, and thoroughly researched like the corporate attorney he was. It started with small observations during his infrequent visits to pick up Tyler, the professional nanny who spoke 3 languages and drove a Tesla, the subtle home improvements, new hardwood floors, updated kitchen appliances, a security system. Most telling was my complete lack of financial desperation. Most divorced women would be demanding more support by now, he'd mentioned to Tyler, fishing for information with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. When Tyler innocently mentioned Mommy's big office in Palo Alto and all the people who work for her, Michael's interest sharpened. A simple Google search revealed what I'd been hiding. CEO Sarah Mitchell, not just surviving post-divorce, but thriving beyond his comprehension. The man who dismissed my computer stuff for 12 years suddenly realized he'd thrown away a golden goose, and he wanted it back. Jessica Martinez, Michael's 29-year-old wife and former paralegal, was the puppet master behind this legal assault. I'd met her exactly once during Tyler's school play, where she'd clung to Michael's arm like a designer accessory and made pointed comments about broken homes. Through my attorney's discovery process, I learned that Jessica had been the one pushing hardest for this custody battle. She's probably hiding millions, she'd texted Michael, screenshots later revealed. Tyler deserves better than a workaholic mother who bought her success. The irony was suffocating. The woman who'd helped destroy my marriage was now positioning herself as Tyler's salvation. Jessica saw my son as her ticket to respectability, and my fortune as her path to the lifestyle she felt entitled to. She'd convinced Michael that going after custody wasn't just about Tyler's well-being. It was about claiming what was rightfully his from our marriage. She was wrong on all counts, but dangerously determined. The phone call from my mother, Margaret, should have prepared me for the betrayal, but some wounds cut too deep to anticipate. "Sarah, honey, Michael called me," she said, her voice dripping with the same manipulative sweetness I'd endured for 40 years. "He's worried about Tyler, and frankly, so am I." The conversation devolved quickly into familiar patterns. She questioned my fitness as a mother, my priorities, my selfish decision to cut her off financially after the divorce. "A boy needs stability, not a mother who's never home," she continued, echoing Michael's talking points with suspicious precision. When I asked directly if she'd been in contact with my ex-husband, the silence spoke volumes. Margaret had found her golden opportunity for revenge against the daughter who'd refused to bankroll her retirement. She'd testified against me in a custody hearing for the promise of financial support from Michael. Blood apparently was thinner than money. My brother David's betrayal cut even deeper because I'd seen it coming and done nothing to prevent it. 2 years earlier, during TechLegal's rapid expansion, he'd approached me about a management position in the company. David, who'd never held a job for more than 6 months, who'd borrowed money from me countless times without repaying it, who'd shown zero interest in technology beyond gaming and cryptocurrency speculation. When I gently declined to hire him, explaining that nepotism would undermine the meritocracy I'd built, his reaction was swift and vicious. "You think you're better than us now," he'd spat during our last conversation. "Must be nice to forget where you came from." Now, 18 months later, he'd found his revenge. David had contacted Michael directly, offering to testify about my changed behavior since becoming successful. The brother who'd taught me to ride a bike was now willing to help take my son away. Family loyalty, I realized, was a luxury not everyone could afford. The legal strategy was as brilliant as it was heartless. Michael's attorney, Robert Steinberg, a shark from one of San Francisco's most prestigious family law firms, had crafted a narrative that painted my success as evidence of my failure as a mother. The petition alleged material change in circumstances due to my obsessive focus on career advancement at the expense of parental responsibilities. They claimed I'd concealed substantial assets during our divorce proceedings, making me fundamentally dishonest and unfit for primary custody. Most insidiously, they argued that Tyler needed a stable, traditional family environment, meaning Michael and Jessica's suburban McMansion in Pleasanton versus my work-obsessed single-parent household. They demanded full custody, $25,000 monthly in child support, and a complete recalculation of our divorce settlement to include my company's value. It was financial warfare disguised as concern for Tyler's welfare, and they'd assembled my own family as weapons against me. The preliminary hearing was set for October 15th, just 3 weeks away. As I sat in Patricia Chen's office reviewing the devastating accusations lined up against me, she delivered the final blow with professional gentleness. "Sarah, you need to prepare yourself for something difficult," she said, sliding a document across her mahogany desk. "Michael's attorney has submitted a witness list for the custody hearing." My eyes scanned the names, each one a dagger to my heart. Margaret Mitchell, my mother. David Mitchell, my brother. Dr. Amanda Foster, Tyler's pediatrician, who'd apparently been contacted about my frequent schedule changes. 3 women from Tyler's school who'd been told I was always working, never present for activities. But the final name made my blood run cold. Jessica Martinez Mitchell, listed as stepmother and primary caregiver. They weren't just taking my son. They were erasing me entirely. Patricia's voice seemed to come from far away as she said, "They're building a case that you're an unfit mother, Sarah, and they have your family's help to prove it." The San Francisco Superior Court felt like a coliseum where I was the only gladiator without a weapon. Department 12, Judge Patricia Yamamoto presiding, a woman I'd later learn had built her career on protecting children from genuinely unfit parents. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat at the defendant's table, watching my own family file in to testify against my fitness as a mother. Michael looked confident in his navy Armani suit, Jessica radiant beside him in cream-colored designer, where that screamed respectable stepmother. My attorney, Patricia Chin, squeezed my shoulder as the bailiff called the court to order. "Remember, stay calm no matter what they say," she whispered. But nothing could have prepared me for the systematic destruction of my character that was about to unfold. My own mother sat in the witness section, avoiding my eyes with the skill of someone who'd perfected emotional manipulation for 70 years. This wasn't just a custody hearing. It was a public execution of everything I'd believed about family loyalty. Margaret Mitchell took the stand with the theatrical flair she'd always possessed, dabbing her eyes with tissues before speaking. "Your Honor, I've watched my daughter transform into someone I don't recognize," she began, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Sarah used to be such a devoted mother, but success has corrupted her priorities." She painted a picture of a woman obsessed with money and status, someone who'd hired strangers to raise Tyler while pursuing selfish ambitions. "She cut me out of her life completely when I expressed concern about her choices," Margaret continued, shooting me a wounded look. "A loving daughter doesn't abandon her family the moment she achieves success. How can we trust her not to abandon Tyler when he becomes inconvenient?" Each word was carefully chosen, each pause perfectly timed. She turned my boundary setting into evidence of my moral failure, my success into proof of my selfishness. The courtroom was silent except for the scratching of the court reporter's keys, documenting my character assassination one lie at a time. David's testimony was shorter, but more brutal in its personal betrayals. My brother, wearing a suit I was certain he'd borrowed, spoke with the wounded righteousness of someone who'd perfected victimhood. "Sarah has always thought she was better than our family," he testified, his voice steady despite the magnitude of his lies. "When her company started making money, she completely changed. She refused to hire me despite my qualifications, claimed it would be nepotism. But then she hired a bunch of strangers instead." He painted my professional boundaries as family abandonment, my success as evidence of my cold heart. "She's so focused on building her empire that she's forgotten what really matters: family loyalty, putting Tyler first." The worst part wasn't the lies he told, but the grains of truth he twisted beyond recognition. Yes, I'd refused to hire him. Yes, I'd prioritized building a professional team over family connections. But turning those decisions into evidence of my unfitness as a mother was a betrayal that cut deeper than Michael's affair ever had. Michael's testimony was a masterclass in legal manipulation, delivered with the confidence of someone who'd spent 15 years convincing juries of carefully constructed narratives. "Your Honor, during our marriage, Sarah presented herself as a struggling consultant earning minimal income," he began, consulting notes with theatrical precision. "I supported our family financially while she pursued what I believed were small technology projects. Only after our divorce did I discover she'd been building a multi-million-dollar company, systematically hiding assets and income." He made my discretion sound like criminal deception, my modest lifestyle like calculated fraud. "She's demonstrated a pattern of deception that goes to the core of her character. If she could lie to her husband for years about something this significant, how can we trust her with our son's welfare?" The most infuriating part was his tone, wounded, betrayed, genuinely hurt by my supposed duplicity. He'd rewritten our entire marriage, casting himself as the victim of my ambition rather than the author of his own betrayal. Jessica's appearance as a character witness was the cruelest twist of the knife. The woman who destroyed my marriage now positioned herself as Tyler's savior, speaking with the authority of someone who'd known my son for exactly 14 months. Tyler has expressed confusion about his mother's priorities, she testified, her voice soft and caring. He's told me that Mommy is always on her computer, always in meetings, always too busy for the things that matter to him. She described elaborate plans for Tyler's future, family vacations, homework help, attendance at every school event. Michael and I can provide the stable, two-parent household that child development experts recommend. We're ready to put Tyler first in a way that Sarah's career demands simply don't allow. The audacity was breathtaking. The woman who'd helped break up Tyler's original family was now claiming to offer him the stability she'd helped destroy. She spoke about my son with the confidence of ownership, as if his welfare was hers to determine. I gripped my hands together to stop them from shaking, watching my replacement paint herself as my superior in every way that mattered. The character witnesses Michael's team had assembled painted a damning picture of a mother in absentia. Dr. Amanda Foster, Tyler's pediatrician, testified about my frequent rescheduling of appointments and my tendency to send the nanny instead of attending personally. 3 teachers from Tyler's Montessori school described a mother who was always on her phone during pickup, missed the spring concert for a business meeting, and seemed more interested in discussing Tyler's schedule than his emotional needs. Each testimony felt like a paper cut, small individually, but collectively creating a portrait of maternal negligence that made me want to disappear into my chair. The worst part was that some of their observations contained kernels of truth. I had rescheduled appointments for board meetings. I had missed the spring concert for a crucial client presentation. But they stripped away all context, the countless bedtime stories, the weekend adventures, the homework help, the middle-of-the-night comfort when Tyler had bad dreams. I was being judged solely on my professional demands, as if success and motherhood were mutually exclusive. The message was clear. Good mothers don't build empires. As the final witness stepped down, I felt the walls of the courtroom closing in around me. Judge Yamamoto reviewed her notes with the methodical precision of someone weighing a child's future against conflicting testimonies. The evidence against me was overwhelming in its scope: financial deception, family abandonment, maternal neglect, and character defects spanning decades. Michael's legal team had crafted a narrative so compelling that even I began to question my own fitness as a mother. Patricia Chen had done her best to counter their claims, but the sheer volume of testimony against me was suffocating. My own family had provided the prosecution with enough ammunition to destroy any case I might have mounted. As Judge Yamamoto prepared to speak, I closed my eyes and prepared for the verdict that would tear Tyler away from the only stable home he'd ever known. Based on the testimony presented today, she began, her voice carrying the weight of judicial authority. But just as she was about to continue, her court clerk hurried over and whispered something in her ear that made her eyebrows rise in surprise. She looked directly at me for the first time during the entire proceeding, her expression shifting from judicial neutrality to something I couldn't quite identify. Before I render my decision, I need to ask the defendant a question. Judge Yamamoto's question hung in the air like a lifeline I was afraid to grasp. Ms. Mitchell, are you the Sarah Mitchell who serves as Chief Executive Officer of TechLegal Solutions? The courtroom fell silent except for the hum of the ventilation system and my own thundering heartbeat. I could feel Michael's confusion radiating from across the room, Jessica's perfectly composed mask beginning to slip. Yes, Your Honor, I am, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The judge nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place behind her dark eyes. And is TechLegal Solutions the company that developed and maintains the case management system currently used by this court? A murmur rippled through the gallery as the implications began to dawn on everyone present. Yes, Your Honor. We've been proud to serve the San Francisco Superior Court system for over 2 years. What my court clerk had whispered, I realized was recognition. She'd seen my name on countless system updates and maintenance reports. The very technology that was recording this proceeding, managing this case, facilitating this attempt to destroy me, had been created by my hands and my vision. The revelation detonated through the courtroom like a sonic boom. Michael's face cycled through confusion, recognition, and something approaching terror as the full scope of what he'd stumbled into became clear. This wasn't just about a successful consulting business. His ex-wife had built the technological backbone of California's judicial system. Judge Yamamoto continued with barely contained amazement. Ms. Mitchell, according to my clerk, your company's software is currently deployed in over 200 courts across 3 states. Is that accurate? Yes, Your Honor. We're also the primary technology partner for the California state court system. The judge's expression shifted from surprise to something resembling awe. The system that has reduced case backlogs by 40% and increased judicial efficiency statewide. I nodded, feeling power return to my voice for the first time in hours. That's correct, Your Honor. We're quite proud of our impact on the accessibility and efficiency of justice in California. Margaret's face had gone ashen. David looked physically ill, and Jessica was frantically whispering to Michael, who appeared to be having trouble processing that his deceptive ex-wife was apparently a technology industry leader. Judge Yamamoto set down her gavel and leaned forward with genuine curiosity. Ms. Mitchell, help me understand something. You're testifying in a custody case where you're accused of being an absent, work-obsessed mother, yet you've revolutionized how courts across the western United States operate. Can you explain this apparent contradiction? For the first time in 3 hours, I felt like myself again, confident, articulate, and fully aware of my worth. Your Honor, I built TechLegal Solutions specifically because I believe in the importance of justice and family stability. Every efficiency we've created means families get resolutions faster, children spend less time in uncertain situations, and parents can focus on healing rather than navigating bureaucratic nightmares. The irony was perfect. While Michael's team painted my success as evidence of my failure as a mother, I'd actually built a company dedicated to strengthening the very family court system, now judging my fitness as a parent. My work isn't separate from my values as a mother. It's an expression of them. I watched Michael's attorney frantically shuffling papers, clearly trying to figure out how their entire strategy had just imploded. The courtroom dynamics shifted so dramatically I could almost feel the power changing hands. Judge Yamamoto addressed Michael's attorney directly. Mr. Steinberg, you've presented Ms. Mitchell as someone who concealed assets and misrepresented her income during divorce proceedings. But if she's the CEO of a company this significant, wouldn't that information be publicly available? Robert Steinberg, the shark who'd felt so confident an hour earlier, now looked like a man drowning in his own tactics. Your Honor, our client was unaware of the full scope of his ex-wife's professional achievements. The judge's eyebrows rose. Mr. Mitchell, you were married to Ms. Mitchell for 12 years, divorced 2 years ago, and you weren't aware that she'd built one of the most successful legal technology companies in the state. Michael's silence was deafening. Margaret had stopped her theatrical crying and was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. David looked like he wanted to disappear through the courthouse floor. The family that had just finished systematically destroying my character was now facing the reality that they'd been attacking one of California's most innovative entrepreneurs. I felt something shift inside me, a return of the confidence that had built an empire while everyone around me was looking the other way. Standing for the first time during the entire proceeding, I addressed the court with the voice I used in boardrooms and investor meetings. Your Honor, if I may clarify the allegations against me. Judge Yamamoto nodded, now listening with the attention my success commanded. I didn't conceal assets during my divorce because TechLegal Solutions was valued at less than $2 million when our marriage ended. The company's explosive growth occurred entirely post-divorce, built with my own innovations and business acumen. I maintained a modest lifestyle not to deceive anyone, but because I wanted Tyler to grow up with grounded values regardless of our changing financial circumstances. I looked directly at Michael, whose mouth was slightly agape. As for being absent or work-obsessed, I've built a company that allows me to work primarily from home, attend every important school event, and maintain the most stable, loving environment Tyler has ever known. My professional success has enhanced, not diminished, my ability to be the mother he deserves. Judge Yamamoto, then did something that sent chills through Michael's legal team. She began asking pointed questions about their motivations and timing. Mr. Steinberg, help me understand why your client is seeking to modify custody arrangements that have been working successfully for 2 years, coincidentally just after discovering his ex-wife's professional success. The answer came in Jessica's frantic, whispered conversations with Michael and the increasingly desperate attempts to reframe their case. Patricia Chin, my attorney, seized the moment beautifully. Your Honor, we'd like to submit evidence regarding the petitioner's true motivations for this custody modification. She presented text messages between Michael and Jessica discussing my hidden wealth, emails from my mother explicitly asking Michael for financial support in exchange for her testimony, and evidence of David's bitter rejection from employment at my company. The family conspiracy wasn't just morally reprehensible, it was documented in digital ink. Margaret's face had gone from theatrical sadness to genuine panic as she realized her financial motivations were about to be exposed in open court. The perfect family witnesses were revealed as nothing more than opportunistic parasites. The courtroom atmosphere had completely reversed, but I wasn't finished. Looking directly at the family members who'd just spent 3 hours trying to destroy me, I felt a calm determination settle over my shoulders. Your Honor, there's one more thing this court needs to understand about neglect and what's truly in Tyler's best interest. Judge Yamamoto nodded, now hanging on every word. Tyler has thrived in our home, not despite my success, but because of the values that drive it: integrity, hard work, innovation, and the belief that we can build something better than what we inherited. The same qualities that built TechLegal Solutions are the qualities I bring to motherhood every single day. I paused, letting the weight of revelation settle over everyone present. The people testifying against me today have demonstrated that they're willing to betray family for money, lie under oath for personal gain, and use a 5-year-old child as a weapon in their financial schemes. That, Your Honor, is what neglect actually looks like. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the clock ticking on the courtroom wall. Michael's case hadn't just collapsed. It had revealed the character of everyone involved. And for the first time in 3 hours, I knew exactly who was going home with Tyler that night. Judge Yamamoto's gavel felt like an exclamation point on the most important sentence of my life. Based on the evidence presented, and considering the clear financial motivations behind this custody modification request, I hereby deny the petitioner's motion in its entirety. The words washed over me like absolution, but she wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm granting the respondent, Ms. Mitchell, sole legal and physical custody of the minor child, Tyler Mitchell. Michael's face went from confident to devastated in the span of a heartbeat. Jessica grabbed his arm as if trying to anchor herself to a sinking ship. But the judge continued with surgical precision. Mr. Mitchell's visitation rights will be modified to supervised visits, twice monthly, with supervision provided by a court-appointed representative or an individual approved by Ms. Mitchell. The courtroom erupted in whispers as the full scope of my victory became clear. I hadn't just won. I'd been vindicated completely, publicly, and permanently. Tyler would be safe, our life would continue, and the people who'd tried to destroy us would walk away with nothing but the shame of their exposed greed. Your Honor, I said, standing once more with the confidence that had carried me through 12 years of building an empire, I want to address the matter of financial support. Judge Yamamoto nodded, clearly curious about where this was heading. Mr. Mitchell and his legal team have requested significant financial support based on my company's success. I want to make something crystal clear to this court and to everyone present. I looked directly at Michael, whose expression had shifted from shock to something approaching panic. I don't want a single dollar from Michael Mitchell. Not in back support, not in ongoing payments, not in any form whatsoever. The statement hit the courtroom like a thunderclap. I have built a company that allows me to provide Tyler with everything he could possibly need: excellent education, health care, stability, and opportunities that most children only dream of. We don't need Michael's money because we don't need Michael. Jessica's carefully constructed composure finally cracked completely, and she whispered something harsh in Michael's ear. The golden parachute they'd been counting on had just been lit on fire. Judge Yamamoto then delivered the final blow to my family's conspiracy with devastating legal precision. I'm also ordering that the petitioner pay all legal fees and court costs associated with this frivolous litigation. She looked directly at Margaret and David, who had been trying to make themselves invisible in the gallery. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential perjury charges against the witnesses who provided materially false testimony. Margaret's theatrical tears became real for the first time in the proceeding, and David looked like he might be physically sick. This court will not tolerate family members weaponizing the judicial system for personal financial gain at the expense of a child's welfare. The consequences of their betrayal would extend far beyond this courtroom. They'd face criminal charges, financial ruin from legal fees, and the permanent knowledge that they'd sold their souls for money they'd never see. Justice wasn't just served, it was delivered with compound interest. The aftermath unfolded like a perfectly choreographed ballet of karma. Michael's attorney quickly gathered his papers and escaped the courtroom, probably already calculating how to distance his firm from this public relations disaster. Jessica stormed out without a word, her dreams of stepmother status and financial windfall evaporating in the space of an afternoon. Margaret approached me one final time, her face a mask of desperate manipulation. "Sarah! Honey, I was just trying to help," she began, but I held out my hand with the same authority I'd used to build a $150 million company. "No, Margaret, you were trying to profit from destroying your grandson's stability. We're done. Forever." David lingered near the exit, perhaps hoping for some gesture of forgiveness, but he'd burned that bridge beyond repair. The family that had raised me was gone, but the family I'd built with Tyler, based on love, integrity, and mutual respect, was stronger than ever. Sometimes the greatest gift toxic people can give you is showing you exactly who they are. Walking out of the San Francisco Superior Court with Tyler's hand in mine felt like emerging from a tunnel into sunlight. The courthouse steps, where I'd felt so overwhelmed and alone just hours earlier, now felt like a platform for the rest of our lives. Tyler, who'd been staying with my friend Maria during the hearing, ran into my arms with the pure joy of a 5-year-old who trusted that his world would be okay. "Mommy, are we going home now?" he asked, his brown eyes bright with innocence that I'd successfully protected. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going home, and everything is exactly as it should be." Patricia Chin smiled as she watched us, probably already planning the press release that would make this case study required reading in family law courses. "You didn't just win today, Sarah," she said quietly. "You changed how courts will view successful mothers going forward." But honestly, I wasn't thinking about legal precedents or societal impact. I was thinking about bedtime stories, Saturday morning pancakes, and the privilege of watching Tyler grow up in a home built on honesty instead of manipulation. 6 months later, Tyler and I had settled into a rhythm that felt like the life I'd always dreamed of but never dared to hope for. TechLegal Solutions continued thriving, now valued at over $200 million, but more importantly, Tyler was thriving too. His supervised visits with Michael were stilted and infrequent. It's hard to build a relationship with a child when your new wife sees him as an obstacle to overcome rather than a person to love. Tyler never asked about the custody hearing, but he began sleeping better, laughing more freely, and talking about his future with the confidence of a child who knows he's unconditionally loved. I hired Dr. Sarah Williams, a child psychologist, not because Tyler needed therapy, but because I wanted to ensure he had tools to process the adult complexities that had briefly invaded his world. "Children are remarkably resilient," Dr. Williams told me, especially when they have a parent who fights for their stability rather than using them as weapons. Tyler was living proof that integrity and love could overcome even the most coordinated attacks on a family's foundation. These days, when Tyler asks me about courage, and he does with the curiosity of a child trying to understand a complex world, I don't tell him fairy tales about knights and dragons. I tell him about women who refuse to accept less than their worth, who build empires while making breakfast, who choose their children's welfare over family approval. I tell him about the courage to cut toxic people out of your life, even when they share your DNA. Most importantly, I tell him about the courage to trust yourself when everyone around you says you're wrong. Courage isn't about not being scared, sweetheart, I explained last week as we worked on a puzzle together in our sun-filled living room. It's about doing the right thing, even when you're terrified. Tyler nodded with the seriousness of someone already learning that life's most important lessons can't be taught in textbooks. As I watched him concentrate on finding the right piece, I realized that everything I'd built, the company, the financial security, the legal victory, was really just a foundation for this moment. Today, when Tyler asks me about courage, I don't talk about fairy tales. I talk about women who stand up,